saw that silence was not peace. That obedience without question was slavery. That survival without dignity was not life. It was slow death. He understood something they never wanted him to understand. That knowledge is more dangerous than any weapon. Because once a man knows who he is, they can no longer tell him who to be. He realized the most powerful chains are not on the wrists, but on the mind. And so he broke them, not with force, but with truth. Because truth, brothers and sisters, is louder than fear. In the last 2 days, he spoke not as a man begging for acceptance, but as a soul demanding respect. Not just for himself, but for every brother left behind, every sister written off, every child fed lies in the name of comfort. He said, if they won't teach you, teach yourself. If they won't feed you knowledge, grow it in your soul. If they won't open the doors, build your own house and set it on a hill. In the last 2 days, he saw clearly that freedom is not given. It's claimed, it's earned. It's protected, not with violence, but with vision. Not with hatred, but with honor. And the first battlefield is within. He warned us, you can't wait on others to fix the mirror when you refuse to look in it. You can't rise as a people if you won't rise as a person. Discipline is power. Ownership is power. Education is power. And so, in those final moments, he left behind no gold, no throne, no title. He left behind a fire, and now it burns in you. So, ask yourself, what will you do in your last 2 days? Will you whisper, or will you roar? Will you shrink, or will you rise? The time for waiting has expired. You must choose to stand before the world decides to kneel you. Truth is non-negotiable, even when it costs everything. This is not a poetic phrase to be admired from a distance. It is a principle, a weapon, a shield, and a burden. It means that when you find truth, when you arrive at understanding, you no longer have the luxury of pretending not to know. You no longer have the comfort of convenience, because truth is not always comfortable. Truth does not always pay you in applause or position. Sometimes truth costs you relationships. Sometimes it costs you your status. Sometimes it costs you your very life. But what does a man truly have if he does not stand on truth? Too often people choose silence not because they lack the truth, but because they fear the consequences of speaking it. But truth must be spoken, especially when it is dangerous, especially when it is unpopular, especially when the world says, don't go there. Because it is in those moments that the truth carries the greatest power. It is in those moments when silence becomes betrayal. Not just betrayal of others, but betrayal of your own soul.
Everyone isn't going to accept the truth. The church is hard to accept the truth. They are on Jesus so strong. And that's okay. But they are blinded from a European-based Bible. And they don't know the truth. Because it was beaten into our ancestors so hard. And they killed all of our ancestors, their children and all, if they didn't bow down to that. So now they believe it. They believe it down through the years because it was beaten into us so hard. But the Lord is real. The Spirit of the Most High is real. Now some of that Bible is true, but they took a lot out of that Bible. Yes, they did. Oh, yes, they did take a lot out because it was scary to them. We are the true Israelites scattered abroad. Those in Israel today are the fake Jews. They're not the true Jews. No, they're not. The church has to wake up or they'll be lost.
That when you find truth, when you arrive at understanding, you no longer have the luxury of pretending not to know. You no longer have the comfort of convenience, because truth is not always comfortable. Truth does not always pay you in applause or position. Sometimes truth costs you relationships. Sometimes it costs you your status. Sometimes it costs you your very life. But what does a man truly have if he does not stand on truth? Too often people choose silence not because they lack the truth, but because they fear the consequences of speaking it. But truth must be spoken, especially when it is dangerous, especially when it is unpopular, especially when the world says, don't go there, because it is in those moments that the truth carries the greatest power. It is in those moments when silence becomes betrayal, not just betrayal of others, but betrayal of your own soul. There comes a time when you must realize that speaking the truth is not about being liked. It is about being right, not right in the ego-driven sense of winning arguments, but right in the moral sense of aligning with what is just, what is honorable, what uplifts rather than oppresses. The truth is not yours to bury or hoard. It is a light, and once you have it, your duty is to shine it. It is a light, and once you have it, your duty is to shine it, not to blind others with it, but to lead with it. When a man chooses to stand for truth, he becomes a threat to systems built on lies. That's why truth tellers are often targeted, ridiculed, or eliminated. But truth is not yours to bury or hoard. It is a light, and once you have it, your duty is to shine it, not to blind others with it, but to lead with it. When a man chooses to stand for truth, he becomes a threat to systems built on lies. That's why truth tellers are often targeted, ridiculed, or eliminated, but their ideas, their principles cannot be killed. Truth doesn't die. It may go underground for a season. It may be misquoted or distorted, but it rises again because it does not depend on one man or one voice. Truth multiplies wherever courage lies. You cannot claim to want freedom, change, or justice while refusing to acknowledge truth. You cannot shout slogans of liberation while practicing denial. If your movement, your purpose, or your goals are not rooted in truth, they will collapse. Because movements built on lies are temporary, but truth builds legacies, it builds generations, it builds nations. Even in personal life, truth is non-negotiable. If you lie to yourself, you cannot grow. If you ignore the realities of your condition, you cannot heal. If you sugarcoat your failures, you will repeat them. Truth in this sense is not punishment. It is the first act of love. When you confront yourself honestly, when you say, this is where I am, this is what I've done, this is what I must change, that is the moment you reclaim power. That is the beginning of transformation. That is when freedom starts to move in your direction. Truth is not arrogance. Truth is not lightness. Truth is quiet. Sometimes truth is consistent. Truth does not need costumes. It does not require gimmicks. It stands even when no one claps. And that's why it frightens people, because it does not need permission. It exposes weakness. It unmasks frauds. It strips away false comfort. To live by truth means you may stand alone. You may be misunderstood, but you will never be lost. That is the beginning of transformation. That is when freedom starts to move in your direction. Truth is not arrogance. Truth is not lightness. Truth is quiet. Sometimes truth is consistent. Truth does not need costumes. It does not require gimmicks. It stands even when no one claps. And that's why it frightens people, because it does not need permission. It exposes weakness. It unmasks frauds. It strips away false comfort. To live by truth means you may stand alone. You may be misunderstood, but you will never be lost. Because truth has a way of bringing clarity in chaos. It gives you direction when the world is full of noise. It gives you identity when the world tells you to blend in. When you live by truth, your steps become firm, your words become weighty, your presence becomes impactful. Not because you seek attention, but because truth through you demands it. Even when truth costs you, it pays you back in integrity. And integrity is a currency more valuable than gold. With integrity, you can look in the mirror without shame. With integrity, your children inherit a legacy of honesty. With integrity, your enemies may hate you, but they cannot expose you, because you already exposed yourself to the truth, and in doing so, you became bulletproof in spirit. So the question is not whether truth is worth the cost. The real question is, what is the cost of living without it? What do you become when you avoid truth? What kind of world do you help create when you let lies rule because they're easier to live with? History shows us clearly, every great downfall begins when truth is sacrificed at the altar of comfort or control. If you want to rise, if you want to lead, if you want to build something that lasts, truth must be your foundation, not just spoken, but lived, not just admired, but defended. And when you do that, when you truly stand on truth without compromise, you may lose some things, but you will find something far greater peace in your heart, strength in your purpose, and honor in your legacy. That is the reward for those who hold the line when others step back. That is the reward for those who understand truth is non-negotiable even when it costs everything. Self-education is liberation. It is the act of reclaiming your mind from the hands of those who have told you what to think, what to value, and what to ignore. It is not just reading books or memorizing facts. It is the conscious decision to question, to seek, to explore, and to challenge everything that was handed to you without your consent. Real education begins the moment you stop being passive and start being intentional about what you feed your mind. A system that does not want you to rise will never give you the tools to elevate yourself. That's why self-education is not a luxury. It's a survival strategy. The schools may teach you to obey, but they rarely teach you to think freely. The media may inform you, but rarely do they empower you. The world around you may show you what's trending, what's acceptable, and what's easy. But rarely does it teach you how to find truth, how to live with purpose, or how to build power from within.
And you think your religion is the truth? You better think twice.
To seek, to explore, and to challenge everything that was handed to you without your consent. Real education begins the moment you stop being passive and start being intentional about what you feed your mind. A system that does not want you to rise will never give you the tools to elevate yourself. That's why self-education is not a luxury. It's a survival strategy. The schools may teach you to obey, but they rarely teach you to think freely. The media may inform you, but rarely do they empower you. The world around you may show you what's trending, what's acceptable, and what's easy. But rarely does it teach you how to find truth, how to live with purpose, or how to build power from within. When
That's
you
the
commit
truth.
to educating yourself, you stop
Educate
being a
yourself.
consumer of ideas and start
The
being
church
creator of your
and
own
the schools
understanding.
teach you
begin to
lies.
draw connections others don't see. You
They
start
don't
to
know the
recognize
truth.
patterns of manipulation, systems of oppression, cycles of ignorance. You begin to ask why. Why is history told from one side? Why are some voices always amplified while others are erased? Why are some people discouraged from asking questions?
Because they don't want you to know the truth. And these people around here don't want you to know the truth. But God damn it, they ain't gonna silence me because they are ignorant as hell.
Real education. Education that teaches you who you are. Education that connects you to your roots, to your history, to your people.
I love my people, but they are church people and they are ignorant. They're sweet, but they're just as ignorant as all outdoors. They got to come off that joint European slave union shit, or the ancestors is going to beat their ass off of it.
Schools may teach you to obey, but they rarely teach you to think freely. The media may inform you, but rarely do they empower you. The world around you may show you what's trending, what's acceptable, and what's easy. But rarely does it teach you how to find truth, how to live with purpose, or how to build power from within. When you commit to educating yourself, you stop being a consumer of ideas and start being a creator of your own understanding. You begin to draw connections others don't see. You start to recognize patterns of manipulation, systems of oppression, cycles of ignorance. You begin to ask why. Why is history told from one side? Why are some voices always amplified while others are erased? Why are some people discouraged from asking questions? Why is the truth often hidden beneath layers of distraction?
White American lies.
Mind is dangerous. Not the kind of education that simply gives you a degree and a paycheck. No. Real education. Education that teaches you who you are. Education that connects you to your roots, to your history, to your people. Education that shows you how to think critically, not just repeat what you've heard. That kind of education makes you ungovernable in the minds of those who seek to control you.
Exactly. They want to control
me. It makes you free.
I'm free.
Puts the power in
Fuck
your hands.
them.
No one can take it from you. It doesn't depend on a
And then
class.
if you kill me, I'm still free, you stupid ass fool. You won't be able to see me, but I'll still be here, you stupid ass fool. I can do more damage to your damn ass.
It means studying history not just to pass a test, but to understand how the past shaped the present and how you can reshape the future. When you begin to educate yourself, your worldview expands. You stop seeing yourself as small. You stop accepting limitations others placed on you. You realize you come from a long line of survivors, thinkers, creators, warriors, and builders. And suddenly, you're no longer impressed by false authority. You're no longer intimidated by big titles or fancy speeches.
That's the damn
because you know that wisdom doesn't wear a suit. It wears scars. It comes from struggle. It grows in silence. And it shines brightest in those who never stop learning. This is not just about academic growth. It's about mental freedom. When your mind is free, you see the game for what it is. You see how you've been played. You see how systems are designed to keep you distracted, divided, and discouraged. But instead of getting angry and doing nothing, you get equipped. You read. You observe. You sharpen your mind like a blade. Because you know one thing, a sharp mind cuts through every lie. You begin to educate others, not by preaching, but by living the example. You speak with clarity. You move with purpose. People begin to notice something different about you. They feel your presence before you say a word, because education gives you presence. It gives you authority. It gives you backbone. And not because someone else approved you, but because you approved yourself through the hours, the effort, the discipline, and the commitment.
Yes.
Self-education also teaches you humility. The more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know. And that keeps you grounded.
Yes.
It keeps you hungry. It keeps you growing. You no longer chase the spotlight because you're more interested in substance.
Yes.
You stop arguing to be right and start listening to understand.
Yes.
You're no longer reactive, you're strategic.
Yes.
And that's what scares them most. See, when you educate yourself, they can no longer predict you. They can no longer manipulate you with fear or control you with promises. You have your own compass now. You can weigh what is true and what is false. You can decode what is said and what is meant. You stop getting played because you learned how the game works. And that right there is power. In a world that profits off of your confusion, clarity is rebellion. In a world that profits off of your ignorance, education is revolution. So the choice is yours: stay fed on distractions or feed yourself knowledge. Keep waiting for someone to teach you or become the teacher you never had. blame the system for failing you, or outgrow the system entirely. Because the moment you decide to educate yourself truly, relentlessly, and purposefully, you declare that you will not be owned, you will not be silenced, and you will not be broken. You claim your right to think, to question, and to evolve. That is the path to freedom. That is the beginning of real change. And that, more than anything, is why self-education is not just a good idea, it is liberation. Unity through accountability is not a slogan. It is a principle that must be lived if any community, any family, or any movement is to have lasting strength. Too often, we talk about unity as if it's just about standing together, taking group photos, or agreeing on the surface. But real unity begins when individuals take responsibility not only for themselves, but for the condition of those around them. Unity is not built through convenience, it is built through accountability. Accountability means you recognize your part in the bigger picture. You don't just look at what others have failed to do. You ask yourself, what have I done? What have I allowed? What have I ignored? That's where unity starts. Because when every person in the group takes ownership of their choices, their words, and their energy, the group becomes stronger. There are no weak links when everyone is holding themselves to a higher standard. You cannot call for unity while tolerating dishonor. You cannot demand loyalty from others while refusing to correct your own behavior. Accountability is the glue that binds trust. And without trust, unity is just performance. It's fragile. It breaks under pressure. But when a community is built on honest, courageous accountability, it becomes unshakable. That kind of unity is not loud, it's deep. It's quiet strength. It's knowing that everyone has each other's back because they've first taken care of their own front. There is no healing without truth, and there is no unity without correction. When we protect wrongdoers because they're our friends, when we let ignorance slide because it's uncomfortable to address, when we look the other way to avoid conflict, we destroy unity from the inside. Real love holds people accountable. Real community demands growth. And sometimes growth hurts. Sometimes it means calling out behavior that doesn't align with the values we claim to stand for. Not to shame each other, but to raise each other. It takes courage to tell someone, that's not right. We can do better. It takes maturity to hear it and respond with reflection instead of pride. And when that becomes normal in a community, when correction is done with love and received with humility, unity becomes real. It becomes armor. It becomes a force that cannot be divided, manipulated, or weakened. We must also understand that unity does not mean uniformity. We don't have to think the same, dress the same, or believe the same in every detail. But we must agree on the principles that protect and uplift us all: truth, respect, discipline, and accountability. Without those principles, every disagreement becomes a war. But with them, even our differences become opportunities for growth. Too many people want the benefits of unity without paying the price. They want support when they're down, but don't want responsibility when they mess up. They want to be celebrated when they win, but refuse to be questioned when their actions harm the collective. That's not unity. That's selfishness dressed in community clothing. And it leads to betrayal, dysfunction, and collapse.
Exactly.
A strong community is one where no one is above correction.
Exactly.
And no one is beneath protection.
Exactly.
The leaders are accountable to the people, and the people are accountable to one another. Children grow up watching adults model integrity. Neighbors look out for each other not out of fear, but out of love. Mistakes are acknowledged. Apologies are given. Growth is encouraged. That is what accountability looks like. And when that becomes our culture, unity is not something we have to beg for. It becomes the natural result. When you hold yourself accountable, you lead by example. You show others what it means to be responsible. You make it easier for others to follow. You remove excuses. You silence blame. And slowly, one by one, you inspire others to do the same. That's how people rise, not just with power, but with principles. No movement can last without accountability. No revolution can succeed if people are unwilling to be corrected. No family can thrive if people keep hiding behind pride. And no real unity exists where truth is avoided. We cannot be strong together if we are weak alone. The strength of the group is only as powerful as the strength of the individual minds within it. So it begins with you. Are you willing to admit your mistakes? Are you willing to correct your brother or sister with love? Are you willing to listen when you're called out? Are you willing to choose truth over ego, responsibility over reputation, and growth over comfort? If so, then unity is possible, not just for a day, not just for a hashtag, but for generations. Because when a people are united through accountability, nothing can stop them. They won't crumble under pressure. They won't fold under lies. They won't scatter when attacked. Because their bond is not built on convenience. It's built on character. And character doesn't fade when the cameras are off. Character shows up in how we treat each other when no one's watching. It shows up in how we deal with failure, how we respond to correction, how we lead, how we follow, and how we grow. That is the true foundation of unity. That is the only way forward. And that is the legacy we must build if we want our communities to rise and stay risen.
Many believers today are searching for the right church near me or wondering about the best Christian fellowship in town. But what if I told you and the chosen ones never go to any church? This statement will disturb religious minds, but let it. Because the ones chosen by Christ are not driven by Sunday routines or man-pleasing messages. They are called out, not in. Called out of Babylon, called out of dead religion, called out of structures where Christ is no longer the head, but merely a mention.
Join us on Patreon and become part of our journey to uncover history's untold stories. Your support helps us create in-depth content, bring hidden narratives to life, and keep history alive for everyone.
In the annals of history, where human suffering and resilience intertwine, certain narratives remain obscured, deliberately shrouded in silence. Among these narratives lies the haunting story of the slave ship Jesus and the disquieting role the church played in the transatlantic slave trade. This is a tale that merges paradoxes, where sanctity meets savagery, and where the ideals of faith are juxtaposed against the horrors of human bondage. To explore this history is to journey into a labyrinth of contradictions, where institutions meant to uphold morality became complicit in some of the darkest chapters of human history. This story is not merely about the past. It is about understanding the legacies of power, exploitation, and faith that continue to shape our present. The name of the slave ship, Jesus alone, evokes a visceral reaction. How could a vessel bearing the name of one of history's most revered spiritual figures be implicated in the commodification of human lives? This was no coincidence. Rather, it was a reflection of the complex and, at times, sinister intersection of religion, commerce, and empire. The ship, formerly known as Jesus of Lubeck, was not merely a vessel, but a symbol of an era when the moral and spiritual institutions of the day were deeply entangled with the machinery of exploitation. The story of the Jesus serves as a window into the larger narrative of how the church, both overtly and covertly, played a pivotal role in the justification and perpetuation of slavery.
A slave ship called Jesus, it is a voyage into the abyss of human suffering. It takes readers on a harrowing journey through the darkest chapters of human history, where the cries of the oppressed echo through time. This book is a stark reminder of the depths of cruelty that humanity is capable of, and it serves as a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit. It lays bare the horrific reality of the transatlantic slave trade, a stain on human history. The transatlantic slave trade was a brutal and inhumane system that forcibly uprooted millions of Africans from their homeland, tearing families apart and subjecting them to unimaginable suffering. The journey across the Atlantic, known as the Middle Passage, was a nightmarish ordeal that claimed countless lives. The book confronts us with the unimaginable cruelty inflicted upon millions of Africans. It delves into the heart-wrenching stories of individuals who were torn from their homes, shackled, and transported like cargo across the ocean. These stories are a stark reminder of the dehumanization and brutality that characterized the slave trade. It forces us to acknowledge the barbarity of a system that treated human beings as mere cargo. The conditions on the slave ships were beyond deplorable. Men, women, and children were packed into the holds of these vessels with barely enough room to move. The air was thick with the stench of sweat, blood, and death. Disease ran rampant, and many did not survive the journey. Through meticulous research and evocative storytelling, I have attempted to capture the emotional and historical weight of this tragedy. The book is a culmination of years of research, drawing from historical documents, personal accounts, and archival footage. It aims to provide a comprehensive and deeply moving account of the transatlantic slave trade, shedding light on the experiences of those who lived through it. The book delves into the depths of slave ships, those floating prisons where hope dwindled with each passing day. It explores the daily lives of the captives, their struggles to maintain their humanity in the face of relentless dehumanization. The cramped, unsanitary conditions, the despair, and the death that permeated those vessels are vividly depicted, painting a grim picture of life aboard a slave ship. It unveils the cramped, unsanitary conditions, the despair, and the death that permeated those vessels. the book does not shy away from the harsh realities of the slave trade. It confronts readers with the brutal truth, forcing them to grapple with the enormity of the suffering endured by millions of Africans. The stories of resilience and survival amid such overwhelming adversity are both heartbreaking and inspiring. A slave ship called Jesus is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable adversity. Despite the horrors they faced, many of the captives found ways to resist and maintain their dignity. Their stories of courage and defiance are a powerful reminder of the strength of the human spirit. The book honors their memory and pays tribute to their indomitable will to survive. It is a reminder of the millions who perished during the Middle Passage. The journey across the Atlantic was fraught with danger and suffering. Many did not survive the grueling voyage, succumbing to disease, malnutrition, and the brutal conditions on the ships. The book serves as a memorial to those who lost their lives, ensuring that their stories are not forgotten. More importantly, it is a tribute to those who survived, carrying the scars of their ordeal and the memory of those lost. The survivors fought with danger and suffering. Many did not survive the grueling voyage, succumbing to disease, malnutrition, and the brutal conditions on the ships. The book serves as a memorial to those who lost their lives, ensuring that their stories are not forgotten. More importantly, it is a tribute to those who survived, carrying the scars of their ordeal and the memory of those lost. The survivors of the slave trade endured unimaginable hardships, yet they persevered. Their resilience and strength are a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit.
Hawkins was a devout Christian who insisted that his crew serve God daily and love one another. Despite his religious convictions, he was deeply involved in the Atlantic slave trade, organizing 4 slave voyages between 1562 and 1568. The name Jesus of Lubeck was not chosen to reflect any irony or contradiction. It was simply the name given to the ship when it was acquired by the English. The naming convention of ships during this period often reflected religious or royal affiliations, and Jesus was a common name for ships, symbolizing protection and divine favor. In essence, the Jesus of Lubeck was named long before it became involved in the slave trade. Its involvement in this brutal trade was a result of later events and the actions of those who chartered it, rather than any intention to juxtapose the name with its sinister activities. This ship's history serves as a stark reminder of the complexities and contradictions of human actions, especially during periods of colonial expansion and the transatlantic slave trade.
Imagine an injury law firm that is committed.
A lot of people don't know how we got the Bible at all. We Westerners got the Bible thanks to the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church and members of the Church wrote the books of the New Testament. And they took over the books of the Old Testament, which even by the time of Christ had not been finally decided upon by the Jews. The Jews did not close the canon of the Old Testament until the year 100 AD, or thereabouts, at the Synod of Jamnia. And then they finally decided which were the canonical books of the Hebrew Scriptures, and embodied them in the Masoretic text, the earliest copy of which dates early in the 10th century AD. The books to be included in the New Testament were not finally decided upon until the year 382 AD again, at the Synod of Rome under Pope Damasus. So it was the Church, the Catholic Church, that promulgated the Bible and said, we are giving you these scriptures on our authority and by the authority of the informal tradition that has existed among us from the beginning, inspired by the Holy Spirit. So you receive historically the Bible on the Church's say-so. And the Catholic Church insists, therefore, that the Church, collectively, speaking under the presumed guidance of the Holy Spirit, has the authority to interpret the Bible. And you can take that or leave it. I can write a Bible and state within that book that it is indeed the Word of God which I have received. And you're at liberty to believe me or not. Hindus believe that the Vedas are divinely revealed and inspired with just as much fervor as any Christian or any Jew. Muslims believe that the Quran is divinely inspired. And some Buddhists believe that their sutras are also of divine, or rather a Buddhic origin. If we're going to argue about this as to which version of the truth is the correct one, we will always end up in an argument in which the judge and the advocate are the same person. And you wouldn't want that if you were brought into a court of law, would you? Because if I say that, well, thinking it all over, I find that Jesus Christ is the greatest being who ever came onto this earth, by what standards do I judge? There is nobody impartial who can decide between all the religions, because more or less everybody has been, in one way or another, influenced by one of them. I won't deny anybody's right to hold these opinions. You may indeed believe that the Bible is literally true, and that it was actually dictated by God to Moses and the prophets and the apostles. That may be your opinion, and you are at liberty to hold it. I don't agree with you. I do believe, on the other hand, that there is a sense in which the Bible is divinely inspired. Divine inspiration is a wisdom which it's very difficult to put into words, like mystical experience. That's divine inspiration. And a person who writes out of that experience could be said to be divinely inspired. That's divine inspiration. And a person who writes out of that experience could be said to be divinely inspired. But since inspiration always comes through a human vehicle, it is liable to be distorted by that vehicle. Now, so therefore, everybody who receives divine inspiration will express it within the limits of what language he knows. I mean language in the sense of what sort of terms are available to you. What kind of religion were you brought up with? And you had a mystical experience of the type where you suddenly discover that you are one with God. Then you're liable to get up and say, I'm Jesus Christ. And lots of people do. Well, the culture that we live in just can't allow that. There was only one Jesus Christ. And sort of you don't look like you were Jesus Christ coming back again, because it's said in the scriptures that when he comes back, there'll be no doubt about it. He'll appear in the heavens with legions of angels, and you're not doing that. You're just old Joe Dokes that we knew years ago, and now you say you're Jesus Christ. Well, he says that when Jesus Christ said he was God, nobody believed him, and you don't believe again. You know, you can't answer that argument. He says it that way, that you have mistaken your identity. What I thought was just old Alan Watts was only completely superficial. That I am an expression of an eternal something or other. And that I suddenly understand why, exactly why everything is the way it is. It's perfectly clear. Furthermore, I feel no longer any boundary between what I do and what happens to me. I feel that everything that's going on is my doing, just as my breathing is. Is your breathing voluntary or involuntary? Do you do it or does it happen to you? So you can feel it both ways. But you feel everything like breathing. There is no longer any separate you. There is just this great happening going on. So you can very well understand how people to whom this happens feel genuinely inspired. Because very often there goes along with it an extremely warm feeling.
Oh, yes.
Because you see the divine in everybody else's eyes.
Oh, yes.
Playing out an essential part in this colossal cosmic drama. The apostles didn't quite get the point. They were awed by the miracles of Jesus. They worshipped him as people do worship gurus. And so the Christians said, okay, Jesus of Nazareth was the Son of God, but let it stop right there. Nobody else. So what happened was that Jesus was pedestalized. And those who have had this experience and expressed it during those times when the church had political power were almost invariably persecuted. Gordiano Bruno was burnt at the stake. John Scotus Original was excommunicated. Meister Eckhart's theses were condemned. But you see what happens.
Jody Walker, James Walker, was
Jesus,
talked about like a dog.
you strangle the gospel at birth. Gospel means good news. And I cannot for the life of me think what is the good news about the gospel as ordinarily handed down. Here is the revelation of God in Christ, in Jesus. And we are supposed to follow his life and example without having the unique advantage of being the boss's son. The tradition, both Catholic and Protestant fundamentalist, represents Jesus to us as a freak. Born of a virgin, knowing he is the Son of God, having the power of miracles, knowing that basically it's impossible to kill him, he's going to rise again in the end. And we are asked to take up our cross and follow him when we don't know that about ourselves at all. We are delivered, therefore, a gospel which is in fact an impossible religion.
It is.
Because what happened was that Christianity institutionalized guilt as a virtue. You see, you can never come up to it. And therefore, you will always be aware of your shortcomings. And so the more shortcomings you feel, the more, in other words, you are aware of the vast abyss between Christ and yourself. The real good news is not simply that Jesus of Nazareth was the Son of God, but that he was a powerful Son of God who came to open everybody's eyes to the fact that you are too.
Yes! But you are blind.
It's enormously
You are
important
blind.
that churches stop being talking shops. They become centers of contemplation. What is contemplation? Contemplum. It's what you do in the temple. You don't come to the temple to chatter, but to be still and know that I am God.
In a world where scientific paradigms seem set in stone, an unexpected voice has emerged to challenge our fundamental understanding of the universe. Terrence Howard, known to many for his acting career, has recently unveiled a theory so revolutionary that it's sending shockwaves through the scientific community. But as the internet buzzes with misunderstandings and misconceptions, we're here to reveal the profound truth behind Howard's insights. At the heart of Terence's theory lies the flower of life, an ancient geometric pattern found etched into temple walls from ancient Egypt to ancient China. But his interpretation of this symbol goes far beyond anything we've seen before. He proposes that the flower of life isn't just a two-dimensional design. It's a three-dimensional blueprint of the entire universe, hidden in plain sight for millennia. What he has uncovered isn't just a new scientific theory. It's a rediscovery of ancient wisdom, lost to us for tens of thousands of years. As one of the modern keepers of Tehuti's library, I'm here to guide you through the true meaning and implications of his revelations. Howard's theory challenges everything we thought we knew about the nature of reality. He proposes that the flower of life holds the key to understanding the true structure of atoms, the nature of gravity, the mysteries of dark matter, and even the fabric of consciousness itself. His ideas suggest a complete overhaul of the periodic table and offer new perspectives on phenomena like black holes that could revolutionize our understanding of the cosmos. Perhaps most strikingly, he argues that the tetrahedron shape formed by 4 spheres in the flower of life pattern represents the true structure of hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe. If correct, this insight alone would reshape our entire understanding of atomic theory and the fundamental building blocks of reality. But Terence doesn't stop there. He proposes that there are no straight lines in the universe, only curves. This seemingly simple observation has far-reaching implications, potentially unlocking new understandings of gravity and magnetism, and even opening doors to concepts as mind-bending as interdimensional travel. This will challenge your current understanding of quantum physics, the nature of time and space, and the very fabric of reality itself. Take a look at this geometric pattern, the flower of life. It's a series of overlapping circles forming a flower-like shape. Now, watch as we zoom out. You're seeing this same pattern carved into the walls of ancient temples, hidden in sacred sites, and even sketched in Renaissance notebooks. This isn't just a coincidence. This pattern has captivated minds across cultures for millennia. Let's start our journey in ancient Kemet, what we now call Egypt. Here, in the Temple of Asar at Abydos, we find one of the oldest known depictions of the flower of life, potentially dating back over 10,000 years. It's meticulously and molecularly burned into granite with incredible precision. What compelled the ancient Kemetic people to create this pattern with such care? What meaning did this symbol hold for them? The answer might lie in the emerald tablets of Thoth, also known as Tehuti. I've read these tablets dozens of times, and they're filled with profound wisdom. Here's a passage describing a flower, the source of the spirit that binds all in its form. From the emerald tablets of Tehuti, tablet 13, the keys of life and death. The text goes on to say, this flower is streaming through the earth as thine flows through thy form. It's as if Tehuti is describing a cosmic blueprint that permeates everything. Could this be the very flower of life we see molecularly burned into temple walls? This connection between the flower of life and ancient Kemetic wisdom is crucial. The precision and care with which this symbol was created suggest it wasn't merely decorative, but held deep significance. The fact that it appears in the Temple of Asar, a place of immense spiritual importance, further underscores its sacred nature. Moving east, we find the flower of life in ancient India at sites like the Hampi temple complex, dating back to around 1500 BCE. Here, it's not just decorative, it's integrated into the very structure of the buildings. The pattern appears in intricate stone carvings, suggesting it held deep significance in Hindu cosmology. In Hindu tradition, the flower of life is often associated with the concept of Maya, the illusion that masks the true nature of reality. Its presence in temple architecture might be seen as a reminder of the underlying unity and interconnectedness of all things, hidden beneath the apparent diversity of the physical world. In ancient China, traces of the flower of life pattern can be found in artifacts dating back to the Neolithic period, around 6000 BCE. Later, we see it prominently featured in the Forbidden City, constructed in the early 15th century CE. In these contexts, it's often associated with fundamental patterns of creation and the interconnectedness of all things. Chinese philosophy has long emphasized the harmony between heaven, earth, and humanity. The flower of life, with its perfect symmetry and interconnected circles, could be seen as a visual representation of this harmony. Its presence in the Forbidden City, the seat of imperial power, suggests it was viewed as a symbol of cosmic order and balance. The flower of life's appearance across cultures and time raises intriguing questions. How did the same complex geometric pattern emerge in civilizations separated by vast distances and millennia? Some researchers propose it represents a universal mathematical principle, while others suggest it might be evidence of ancient global connections we've yet to fully understand. This universality is one of the most compelling aspects of the flower of life. Its presence in cultures as diverse as ancient Egypt, India, and China suggests it might indeed represent some fundamental principle of reality. Whether this principle is mathematical, spiritual, or both is a question that continues to intrigue scholars and mystics alike. In more recent times, the flower of life has continued to fascinate. It's been studied by geometers, incorporated into New Age spirituality, and even used in modern architecture and design. Its perfect symmetry and complex structure have made it a subject of interest for those studying sacred geometry and the mathematical principles underlying nature. So we have this ancient symbol, puzzling geniuses for thousands of years, appearing in cultures across the globe. It's been revered as a spiritual tool, studied as a mathematical curiosity, and used as an artistic motif. And now, Terrence Howard steps in, claiming we've all been looking at it wrong. Is he onto something revolutionary? Or is this just another case of seeing patterns where there are none? Howard's claim is bold, but it's not without precedent. Throughout history, revolutionary insights have often come from looking at familiar things in new ways. Could Howard's three-dimensional interpretation of the flower of life be the key to unlocking its true significance? As we delve deeper into his theories, we'll explore how this ancient symbol might hold the secrets to understanding the very nature of reality itself. Terrence Howard's journey into the depths of the flower of life began with what he describes as a profound personal experience. In his own words, it was as if the universe itself opened up to him, revealing its innermost workings through this ancient symbol. This wasn't just a fleeting moment of inspiration, but the catalyst for a complete paradigm shift in his understanding of reality. But Howard's revelation goes far beyond mere spiritual epiphany. He proposes that the flower of life is fundamentally three-dimensional. Look at this traditional two-dimensional representation. Now watch as it transforms into a complex three-dimensional structure. According to Terrence, this is the true form of the flower of life, and it's the key to understanding the very fabric of our reality. He argues that our entire history of scientific and mathematical understanding has been limited by our inability to perceive this structure in its true form. Central to his theory is the idea that there are no straight lines in the universe. Everything, he argues, is curved. This concept aligns with Einstein's theory of curved space-time, but he takes it further. He suggests that our entire understanding of geometry is flawed because we've been working with flat representations of a curved universe. This idea challenges the very foundations of Euclidean geometry, which has been the basis of our mathematical understanding for thousands of years. Now, focus on the negative space within the flower of life pattern. He believes that this space, often overlooked, holds the key to understanding the structure of the universe. It's in these spaces that he sees the fundamental building blocks of reality. He proposes that by studying these negative spaces, we can unlock secrets about the nature of matter, energy, and even consciousness itself. Here's where his theory gets really controversial. See this tetrahedron shape formed by 4 spheres in the flower of life pattern. Terence claims this is actually the true atomic structure of hydrogen. Given that hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe, constituting 99.9% of all matter, this idea, if proven, could revolutionize our understanding of atomic theory. It challenges the current model of the atom, which has been accepted since the early 20th century. Howard doesn't stop there. He argues that this 3-dimensional flower of life pattern can explain everything from the formation of planets to the nature of consciousness itself. He sees it as a model for understanding the relationship between macro and micro scales in the universe, challenging our conventional understanding of physics. This holistic view suggests a fundamental unity in the cosmos, from the smallest subatomic particles to the largest galactic structures. Look at how he applies this pattern to rethink the periodic table of elements. He suggests that the relationships between elements can be better understood through this geometric model, potentially leading to the discovery of new elements or properties we've never observed before. This could have profound implications for chemistry and material science, possibly leading to the development of new materials with unprecedented properties. Howard's theories extend to the nature of gravity and magnetism as well. He proposes that these fundamental forces can be explained through the interactions within the 3-dimensional flower of life structure. This could potentially lead to new ways of harnessing energy or even developing advanced propulsion systems. Imagine the possibilities if we could manipulate gravity or create new forms of electromagnetic propulsion based on these principles. Even the nature of time and space isn't safe from Howard's revolutionary ideas. He suggests that the flower of life pattern could be key to understanding the true nature of these fundamental aspects of our reality, potentially even opening the door to concepts like interdimensional travel. This challenges our current understanding of the fabric of space-time and could have implications for fields ranging from quantum mechanics to cosmology. This man's ideas about wave conjugations and mirror shapes that emerge from the 3-dimensional flower of life are particularly intriguing. He believes these structures could explain phenomena that currently puzzle physicists, such as quantum entanglement or the behavior of subatomic particles. If true, this could bridge the gap between quantum mechanics and general relativity, a holy grail of modern physics. Furthermore, he proposes that his understanding of the flower of life could lead to new insights into the nature of dark matter and dark energy, 2 of the biggest mysteries in modern cosmology. He suggests that these elusive components of the universe might be better understood through the lens of his 3-dimensional model. In the realm of consciousness studies, Howard's theories are equally revolutionary. He posits that consciousness itself might be a fundamental property of the universe, encoded in the structure of the flower of life. This idea resonates with some interpretations of quantum mechanics and could potentially explain phenomena like non-local consciousness or the hard problem of consciousness in neuroscience. His work also has potential implications for the field of genetics and biology. He suggests that the structure of DNA and the processes of genetic expression might be better understood through the flower of life model. This could lead to new approaches in genetic engineering or our understanding of evolution. Is Terrence Howard a modern-day genius, unveiling truths that have eluded us for millennia? Or is he seeing patterns where none exist? Well, they certainly do exist. His ideas are challenging conventional wisdom. Yes, this is true. Whether you think that's a good thing or not, they offer a different view of a unified theory that could explain many of the mysteries that continue to puzzle scientists.
That made me dive into it. And then I was able to see the connection between the science and spirituality. And I realized that the quantum physics is really explaining what's happening on the spiritual realm. In other words, the quantum physics is the breakdown and understanding of spiritual energy and what's really happening when you're meditating, when you're focusing on things, when you're trying to manifest reality. All those things are really explained through quantum physics.
Yeah, well, it's you're that observer or the spooky
action at a distance. Yeah,
spooky action at a distance.
Yeah.
Your observation of it, it affects things. Things aren't just, you're not just perceiving it. It has, when you put your finger in the water, the entire ocean has to register that change of motion and condition.
Yes.
It has to be understood on some level. So us gaining information by what's been laid out in front of us, presented before us, most of that is speculation. Because like I was saying before, all of those things, all of that 4% of the universe, they've received Nobel Prizes and all of that for it, but they haven't produced anything that's changing the world or the conditions or making the world a better place. So it still looks like Solomon said, you're chasing after the wind. And when you start questioning these things and going back into meditating, going back, like when I tell people that a lot of this stuff came to me, like you, after having that experience and seeing that aviation phenomenon, it made you question and look into things. Well, likewise, having that dream when I was 4 or 5 years old and being reminded that I was someplace before here, and seeing all those geometries and wondering, why had I never seen those in school?
Right.
And looking for them in school. So I started looking in the Encyclopedia Britannica, and that's where you get the Platonic solids. But then you have to start, what we're afraid to do is question what happened before the Big Bang.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, well, how did this straight line come to be? I started questioning all of those things. What we're afraid to do is question what happened before the Big Bang.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, well, how did this straight line come to be? I started questioning all of those basic things, questioning down to the calculator, questioning every aspect, and questioning, okay, if what they said about God is true, that means I'm an artifact. That he just formed some clay and made me and blew some life into me, and they forgot to mention, or the people that was writing it was unaware of the Brownian effect, that clay is not some dead, unliving material. That clay is alive. It's vibrating and polarizing from positive to negative. Everything, and it's mating. Everything is mating. Like when I mentioned wave conjugations, I always hear, oh, waves don't conjugate. It's like, no, you don't understand that these things are living and are mating. The sex principle is a big part of everything. That's how the universe reproduces itself. But then questioning things like, in a contained universe. Well, this is the biggest thing that happened to me when I was a kid. When I thought I was doing something, I was 13, and I dropped a...
Use your target circle 3.
This world would change, the universe would change overnight.
Yeah, when you know that you are responsible to get yourself out of the hole, you become inventive.
Yeah. Facts.
But when you're waiting for someone else to come and save you from an enslaved condition, freedom is not given. Freedom is something you take. Freedom is something that you demand. If it's handed to you, that's not free. That's not liberty, and we're supposed to be agents or apertures of the Creator in all that we do if we are truly made in God's image.
Right.
And we do have God's power because we have the ability to bring life or death to multitudes of creatures.
Yes.
We can blow a planet out of the sky if we want. So we have the power of God. What are we doing with it?
Exactly. We literally have the power. People don't understand that. Like when people say, the power is in you, the light is in you, people think it's just a phrase or a term, but it's real. The real energy, the divine spark that created everything in the universe is in every atom inside of our body. It inhabits us. So we are God and God is us. And when you begin to understand and grasp that and realize that everything that exists has been manifested by a conscious thought by people. We are creating everything that exists. This table, this microphone, the cell phone, even the paper that's here with the ink on it. We're manifesting this out of conscious thoughts into reality, and people take it for granted. They think that they don't have any power, and human beings don't have the power to create or destroy. But if you look around and pay attention, we're creating and destroying everything. We're the ones that have the power to do that. It's been granted and gifted to us. We just have to know how to wield that power.
Well, maybe we're just a product of this condition of when the earth or planet gets to this particular position from the sun, and the earth will ultimately have to be pushed out to where Mars is, and everything will expand on it. There has to be something that tears it down. So maybe humanity is that thing that tears down that which was put up. Maybe that is our position, because apparently that's what we seem to do. We're very caustic, and I'm hoping that we can become non-caustic, and maybe that's the idea of what Homo sapiens are. Homo sapiens. But I can no longer consider myself to be part of a Homo sapien species when they are nothing like me. They're nothing like my thought process or my hopes or my actions. I'm an actor because I wanted to win my mother's approval. My mother or my actions. I'm an actor because I wanted to win my mother's approval. My mother wanted my brother to be an actor, and I wanted her affection so bad that I'm like, okay, if I become an actor, I'll get her affection. But the moment she died, I realized, what am I doing this? I had hey Ma, look what I'm doing. I'm like, oh, I've gotten distracted, being insecure about my affection with my mother. How many more of us are pursuing things that have nothing to do with our calling or our purpose because we're trying to, my mother's been dead, for damn near 20 years now. Longer, I can't waste energy trying to please her when I already had her approval. Right. I just was insecure. So bound yourself up, strengthen yourself up, and get to the job that you have to do. Otherwise, you're wasting your time and you'll end up being relegated to another purpose instead of that which you were supposed to accomplish.
Man, you're speaking true facts today.
That is the truth, Terrence. Thank you for helping me. Thank you, Terrence.